In the first watch today, sanity in the workplace. Second watch, getting to the truth. Getting to the truth. For our social media question, we ask, what would you do if you witnessed a coworker or client having a breakdown at your workplace? Share your responses in our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also WhatsApp 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your response later on the program, but first, as I quote, Kareem, today's I quote.
Today's I quote is, "There is no remedy for love but to love more." And that is from Henry David Thoreau. And let's do that again. There is no remedy for love but to love more.
Well, he means what? The love of God?
I sure hope so.
Good morning, Kareem. How are you doing, sir?
I'm not too bad. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am well. I am well. I am well indeed. The morning watch will return after a moment.
Sunday, February 4 is World Cancer Day. Close the care gap. This Friday, February 2, Love 101 will be live on location at the Jamaica Cancer Society, and we'll talk up the things, share information that you should know or need to be reminded about this dreaded disease. And here's something extra. If you have never done a pap smear or never done one in 4 years, or if you are unemployed and could do with a little help, you could qualify for a free pap smear. Call 876-301-0346 or 876-579-7097 this Thursday, February 1 to register. That's 876-301-0346 or 579-7097. Women, make your appointment at the Jamaica Cancer Society any weekday or visit your doctor. Get those mammograms or pap smears done. And men, your annual prostate check. It is that important. Listen for the highlights and information givings this Friday, February 2 at 8:30 a.m. right here on Love 101, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. What would you do if you see someone having a mental breakdown? It could happen anywhere at any time. How prepared are you for such a thing? And what if it happens in public? Well, our guest this morning to discuss this topic, we have internationally registered counseling psychologist, Tea House Therapy, Jehan White. Jehan White. We also have operator, Caribbean Society for Human Resource Professionals, headhunter, human resource practitioner, Rochelle James. Rochelle James, Jehan White. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for
Morning,
having
Jehan
me.
White, Rochelle James. Can we hear you? Can you unmute yourselves if you're muted? Not sure if we're hearing either Jehan White or Rochelle James.
Hello?
Yes, I think, yes, wonderful. Hearing you now, and we are hearing Jehan White or Rochelle James.
Jehan White.
Rochelle James, are we hearing you now or are we seeing you as well? I think Rochelle James is coming in. So, Jehan White, good morning. We'll start with you while we see if we can have Rochelle James on. You're an
Good
international.
morning.
Oh, Rochelle James, you're now on. So we now have the both of you. Great.
Good morning.
Excellent. Have it great having you both on. We can hear you both now. Starting with you, Jehan White, how should something, well, there was a recent incident or situation in the western part of Jamaica. I won't go into the details of it, but in a nutshell, someone was witnessed having some sort of a breakdown, it's alleged. So, in such a situation, without going into the specifics of the one that was reported, if you witness someone having what appears to be a mental breakdown in public, and especially if it's a situation where you don't necessarily have persons who are trained around who would know what to do through by virtue of their training.
Right.
Any tips as to how you should handle a situation like of this nature?
Are you referring to as from the perspective of a member of the public?
Well, you can give us more than one angle because you could have someone who's just a
Okay.
member of the public with no training whatsoever. They've never seen this before. And you could have someone who is maybe employed somewhere. Someone could have walked into a store. You are a cashier in the store or you are a receptionist in a business place. Someone is having some sort of a breakdown. How do you deal with that?
Great question. From the perspective of a member of the public who has absolutely no training, the key thing we always talk about is safety. So if it is in a public space, if there are a
Stick
lot
up,
of
stick
people
up in
around,
J and white, stick up in J and white. Safety for who?
ah,
Yeah.
thank you for the clarification. Safety for both the individual having the episode, but also for the people around. So when someone is in the middle of a mental crisis or in a crisis situation, they are not thinking clearly. That's usually expected and considered. And so if someone is not thinking clearly, if someone that is neighboring or witnessing, then it's usually a good idea to try and give them space. That's usually what we call it in the counseling world. Just give the person space, whether it be figurative or literal. And so in this case, it might be literal space. So clearing the area as much as you can and then calling for help. So calling the emergency services, calling the police if it's in, let's say a store or something like that. Um, Trying to give the person's
I
quote
know, I
unquote
know, I know, I know
space.
I'm jumping in here, but when you say the emergency services, if you can be a little bit more specific, you mentioned the police. Is there any other type of emergency service you have in mind?
Well, in the perfect world, I would I would love to say that emergency services that are the police are the best option in terms of handling that kind of crisis situation when it comes to the general public, because you're not entirely sure always what's going on. If there's something personal, if there's something mental, there's a lot of factors that you need to consider that most people are not trained for. So the police would be the best option. I also, in some circumstances, if you're able to describe to the police or what is going on, they can ideally, and I'm not entirely sure of the training that is available, or even if the service is available. But in a lot of other arenas, if you call the police and you describe something like someone is having a mental breakdown or they seem to be having an episode or some crisis, then they bring someone who is trained in crisis response. And so
Okay.
not everyone, of course, specialized training in which they know that if someone is having, you need to properly assess the situation. They know how to come into the situation, assess it, keep people safe, i.e., both the person who's having the episode and the public, as well as then create an environment where they can de-escalate in a way that there's ideally minimal damage or harm.
Create
So
an environment where they can de-escalate. That sounds like a lot. It's not. It sounds like a
it's
lot
not easy.
into a couple of words. You want to expound on that a little bit before we bring in Rochelle James?
Absolutely, absolutely. So when I say de-escalate the situation, so if it's, and I'm using the public, and again, a store, like you said. So in a store, if this person has specialized training, and ideally the police have this kind of training, they know to clear the area, they know to remove things that could harm them. So let's say there's racks around of clothing, move those racks of clothing if you can, and speaking a calm voice and try and ask what is going on and how they can help. Now, if the person is violent, then it's of course a little bit different. So if the person is, and not violent, Evan, I want to remind, violence is uncommonly to harm others. It's usually to protect myself in those kinds of circumstances because there's a lot of fear, unsurety, etc. And so if you remind the person who would be trained in that kind of crisis intervention, if they know the potential violence is to protect themselves, if they are given reassurances or even given enough distance between yourself and them, that they know that you cannot come and charge at them, that they are safe, they actually can de-escalate as well. So there's a lot of different tools and tactics that someone who is trained in that kind of environment would know to employ, so that they can help to create the safe environment like I described, or more of a safety, so the person feels less fear and they are more likely to be ideally calmer. So that would be what I would recommend for Joe Public.
That's a lot to unpack. Rochelle James, you are the operator of Caribbean Society for Human Resource Professionals, a headhunter and a human resource practitioner. In terms of staff, someone might walk into a particular store or business place of some sort, and, suddenly they start having a mental breakdown of some sort or some episode, and the staff in the office, whatever level of staff, it could be junior staff, middle level staff, or senior staff, they might become completely confused and not know what to do. Any words of wisdom, Rochelle James? Any words of advice if you want to elevate it to that level of advice?
So I'm gonna pick up where Jan left off, and de-escalation is key and essential. Normally in those situations, what happens is, unfortunately, persons either run away, try to grab the individual that is having the episode, or unfortunately or fortunately for me, they call HR to try and figure out what to do. So it is not the norm for persons to be trained to handle these situations. And the closest thing that happens to any kind of training in how to de-escalate, how to handle difficult interactions comes through customer service training. And that is really the extent of it. So there's not normally somebody in the organization who has that kind of training or exposure outside of possibly your HR practitioner. But
James, I'm going to ask you to just pause one moment, only because we're upon a break, but you're about to get to a section of what you're saying there that sounds very interesting, and we need to hear it. So do not lose your train of thought. Jan White will be coming back to you as well. Listeners, please stay with us. Do not go anywhere at all this morning. Very important topic. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
Pull up at the gas station and the attendant come up.
87 or 90.
I don't know why him think I would put 87 in my new car. But me inside. But when him say
Cash or card?
me say, big man, why would I take my cash and buy gas? I pay for everything with my Sagicor Bank credit card. Grocery, gas, bills. Cause when you use your card, you get your reward. If I pay cash, you are gonna give me a reward.
We can wipe your windscreen.
Earn the best rewards ever with Sagicor Bank credit cards. Conditions apply.
When you say phosphorus, you say electrical. SWA cables, conduits, transformers, and breakers. When you say phosphorus, you say lighting, chandeliers, and more. When you say phosphorus, you say LEDs and solar water heaters. Phosphorus is electrical, lighting, solar, and LEDs. Visit us today, Kingston, Mandeville, and Montego Bay. Phosphorus.
It's our business to know how much is being spent in what areas, from education to healthcare.
From roads to security, because our taxes help pay for it.
So, the national budget is our business.
The national budget is my business.
It is my business.
The national budget is my business and yours.
The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
If you want a place to just chill and hold a vibe,
a place where you can get some good belly burning laugh,
a bedrock a keep, and deep discussion about life,
make sure you don't miss Come Make We Draw Long Bench with Shivani Blair
every Friday at 9 p.m. during Fellowship Fridays.
Mrs.
Massa, it's not normal.
And we're sure you will enjoy it plenty.
So come, make we draw a long bench the next time Friday I keep.
At 9 p.m.
Right here on the family station.
Love 101.
Bench them gone dear child.
Everything you make the universe accurately ring. Give me a vibe to chant, open my vibe to sing.
Are you ready for another exciting show inside Alive 1 to 5 this Throwback Thursday, February 1? Well, join me, Sarah, and the Chirpy One for another time to recollect and reconnect. Stay tuned for the brain testing mental science at 1:45. Then Prayer Blast will be at 2 o'clock as we ring in the prayer bells of heaven. 2:15 inside Pieces of the Past, we share with you the history of mental music. Then at 3 p.m., you join us as we bring you music in a good old Take Me Back style this Throwback Thursday. All the show will come alive from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. this Throwback Thursday, February 1 on the family station, Love 101.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the first watch, the main watch. The topic is sanity in the workplace. Sanity in the workplace. Our guests are Jan White and Rochelle James. Jan White, internationally registered counseling psychologist, Tea House Therapy, and Rochelle James, operator, Caribbean Society for Human Resource Professionals, headhunter, human resource practitioner. Rochelle James, you are in the middle of making a very important point before the break. Please continue.
Yes, I was about to say that the ideal approach, usually, as Gian mentioned, is really to call the security forces, call the police, because they are the best and most capable in our context here in Jamaica to handle such a situation. I don't know if we're going to get into the video a little bit, but in reviewing it myself, based on what happened in the Montego Bay airport, there was a little bit of uncertainty from the crowd and the employees involved, but the police did step in and give their best effort to try and de-escalate.
Yes, you see, I know that persons may have the situation in Montego Bay, that recent situation in mind, but I am sort of not that much wanting to get into the details of that because sometimes the way things are reported and editorialized, I don't know if there's anything relevant that is missing. But notwithstanding that, I think it is important, and which is why we're doing the topic this morning, I suppose, because persons need to know what to do in a situation like that, or any such situation, because it could catch you off guard. It can catch anyone unawares. So thank you, Rochelle James, for your contribution in that regard. Now, are there any such things as counseling protocols? I know that the average member of the public is not a counselor, but the average worker is not a counselor. But are there some little sort of mini guidelines, if I could use that term, or basic guidelines, just like first aid? We're not doctors or nurses, most of us, but there are some little things we know we should do to at least, as best as possible, stop a wound from continuing to bleed. Any little counseling tips anyone would like to leave with us? No, we're not going to hang up a shingle and say we're counselors, but is there any words that we should say or not say? Should we, sound serious, or should we sound as mild as possible in our tone? Starting with you, Jan White, followed by, Rochelle James. Jan White?
I believe that, and that's a really great question, because in the perfect world, my response is absolutely. The best things that we can say is always going to be, you are safe, you're okay, no one is going to hurt you. If you say any words at all, it's no one is going to hurt you. Yeah. And over and over and over again, because the reality is oftentimes the person is afraid. Even though they may be displaying moments of aggression or violence, like I said before, the base is fear. And so they're trying to protect themselves. So if you remind them no one is going to hurt them, and give them a distance or a proximity of space so that they feel like no one can come or charge at them, oftentimes that is a good kind of tip. Probably the most general tip I can provide. And of course, calling the police, like Rochelle had said before. I'm really a huge advocate of not videoing things. I think in an era where everything is available online, um, it can be it can actually be very triggering and frightening for somebody to see phones pointed in their direction. So the other thing I would implore people to do is to not video things. Clear the area, not video, you are safe. Those are the basic counseling tips I would give, or at least the basic intervention
can I make
tips.
an
Go
inquiry
ahead,
of you in that regard? Because
please.
you may want to have some footage for evidential purposes. Just saying that. So is it that maybe if you do a video, it should not be done in a way where the person is seeing that you are doing the video? I'm just asking.
I, I see the benefit of both of those sides. So yes, I
Okay.
can appreciate the evidential necessity. However, you don't want them to see it, but what happens if they do? You've broken the trust, and now it's much
Just
harder.
thought of asking because you could have
Right.
situations where the very same police, when they do turn up, they might want to review the footage, or whoever
Fair.
it is, they might want to see what really happened at this material time. But anyway, I'll leave that
Yeah.
for the time being. You are
Right.
going to continue, Jan White?
Like I said, the reason I was bringing up the video aspect of it was simply because oftentimes it can frighten people further. That's all. And
Understood.
so, and
Understand.
when the intention is to decrease the fear.
Totally understand. Rochelle James, any basic tips you would give to us a staff member in an organization, or it can even be a situation where it doesn't necessarily happen in an office. It could happen on a construction site. You have workers, they are constructing a building or some whatever it is.
My advice.
There's a
My advice.
breakdown right there on the site. What
Mhm.
what sort of general tips can you leave with persons? You said
So
my advice.
my advice is that in the HR space, we have a term referring to using your calming HR voice.
Ah,
And that is the best advice I could give to somebody who doesn't have any experience handling such situations. If it happens with a coworker, if it happens with a customer, if it happens with someone, you see them having this breakdown, and you are waiting for the trained professionals to arrive, start by, if you choose to intervene, that is, start by using your calming HR voice and try to get them to focus their attention on you. Because, as Gian said, not just the phones, but even persons, their reactions to,
yeah.
to the situation can help to make the person feel scared or defensive, or turn a bad situation worse. So hopefully, if you are involved, you have a choice. Help to create space, or you can choose to step forward and use your best version of a calming HR voice, and try and get them to focus on you and not focus on the crowd,
You
and
know,
talk them through calming down.
posing this one to both of you, and I'm going to, on this occasion, ask either of you to jump in and respond. What about dealing with the reactions of the persons looking on? Now, let me clarify, or let me explain. The behavior of the person having the mental breakdown or the episode could potentially cause the person who is watching it to become triggered in some sort of a way. So now you have two sets of situations. The situation where the person is having the breakdown, but think about the person on the other end. Maybe the person having the breakdown says something either directly to you or to persons generally that cause the person looking on to become triggered in some sort of a way. So now you have more than one set of triggers that you're dealing with. Any comments? Either of you, Jan White, Rochelle James, who's going to speak first?
Let me see if I can take this one. So, for us as Jamaicans specifically, we thrive on excitement, and it is in our nature to comment, to create a spectacle, and to add um our layman expertise to a situation. And
Yep.
sometimes just hearing everyone's reactions to what is going on makes, as I said before, makes a bad situation worse.
Yeah.
So going back to the initial recommendation, you don't necessarily want the person to recognize, oh wow, I have become a spectacle. You want
Oh,
them to you want them to focus more on, all right, this is not as bad a situation as I think. Let me see if I can calm down.
hmm.
I'll allow Jan.
Okay. Thank you, Rochelle James. By the way, that was Rochelle James. Jan White.
Yes, I wanted to actually pick up with from what Rochelle had said, in terms of not ideally not letting them recognize they have become a spectacle. Um, in a lot of ways, the creation of having something more to talk about, creating a spectacle, thriving on that excitement, can be the exact counter of what's helpful in that kind of situation, in a crisis situation. And that's one of the reasons why one of the first things I had mentioned was clearing the area. So you're minimizing the opportunity for there to be more people to add to the situation that's at hand.
And they are less likely to be triggered if they're cleared from the area. Jan White.
Who would be triggered? So
The
let me just clarify.
the person's looking on.
Well, the person's looking on, ideally, I'm not concerned about triggering them. I'm more concerned about the person who's having the episode.
No, I totally understand your focus, but the question that I posed was, how do you
Yes.
deal with a situation now where the person's looking on might now become triggered because maybe the person who is having the episode says something very sharp and very challenging to the person's looking on, and or whatever, and the person looking on now find themselves being triggered by what was said to them. So
Okay.
you
So
have
you
two
now
sets of
have two
situations to deal with.
situations. Got you.
Yes.
Sorry, my apologies. I better
It's
understand.
okay.
Okay,
That's all right.
so then in those circumstances, I think the best thing, and all of this, I do want to preface by saying that there's no perfect way to handle this. And
Yes.
so in the ideal and the best way and with the best intentions, people around can minimize. So even if clearing a situation can trigger somebody else, it
Yes.
can other people who are also being cleared can focus on that. So like Rochelle had mentioned, using the calming HR voice, using what we call the counseling voice, having the person who's having an episode focus on them. If someone else is also being triggered, ideally the same thing can be applied. Even if it's a matter of others can commiserate, and we can talk about how upsetting this is, and we can share our fears and share what's going on. The main episode, since the area is cleared, safety has been created, calming voice has been applied. Others who are now triggered can also get similar kinds of support, but not necessarily in the same magnitude, but enough to feel like they are able to manage.
I think we have to leave it there this morning. Very interesting and very important discussion, and a very serious conversation that we had this morning in the first watch. I want to thank both you, Mrs. James and Miss White, for being with us in the first watch. Thank you so much for your time and for your thoughts, and all the best.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Listeners, please stay with us. We'll be right back in the morning watch.
Bank, anything possible with a little savings in your hand. Save your can.
The time by Jan Bank is
7:31 a.m.
They're full of life. You're full of love. They're carefree. You care more. That's why we created Child Protector, a critical illness insurance plan from Sagicor Life. It provides coverage for your child in the event of 15 critical illnesses, hospitalization benefits, life insurance, and investment benefits. So make sure your child can live life to the fullest. Apply for Sagicor Child Protector today.
Hurt less with Pharma Joint Flex. Taking Pharma Joint Flex daily helps to repair, replenish, and revitalize worn, damaged cartilage that causes joint pain. Do you suffer from arthritis and chronic joint pain? Then Pharma Joint Flex is the remedy for you. Our all-natural formula contains glucosamine and chondroitin, ingredients for joint repair, so you can get relief. Ask your pharmacist or doctor for Pharma Joint Flex, distributed by Massey.
From generation to generation, Jamaicans have depended on J&B Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. J&B Bank will help you find a way.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Let's take a look now at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And we have in the Jamaica Observer a story here of great concern. Person of interest in rape of elderly woman known to her. We turn to the Gleaner, another story which is very concerning. 151 children who went missing last year still not found. We move over to Loop Jamaica News. Among the various stories that we have here, ganja seized during raid in St. Elizabeth, farmer arrested. Those and many other sources, stories in our various news sources, apologies. Coming up next, we will read for you some of the feedback from our YouTube and WhatsApp question, which is, what would you do if you witnessed a co-worker or client having a breakdown at your workplace? If you haven't done so yet, leave your responses on our Facebook or YouTube. Love 1FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes too. 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
Are you ready for another exciting show inside Alive 1 to 5 this Throwback Thursday, February 1? Well, join me, Sarah, and the Chirpy One for another time to recollect and reconnect. Stay tuned for the brain testing mental science at 1:45. And then Prayer Blast will be at 2 o'clock as we ring in the prayers of heaven. 2:15 inside Pieces of the Past, we share with you the history of mental music. Then at 3 p.m., you join us as we bring you music in a good old Take Me Back style this Throwback Thursday. All the time will come alive 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. this Throwback Thursday, February 1 on the family station Love 101.
Sunday, February 4 is World Cancer Day. Close the care gap. This Friday, February 2, Love 101 will be live on location at the Jamaica Cancer Society, and we'll talk up the things, share information that you should know or need to be reminded about this dreaded disease. And here's something extra. If you have never done a pap smear or never done one in 4 years, or if you are unemployed and could do with a little help, you could qualify for a free pap smear. Call 876-301-0346 or 876-579-7097 this Thursday, February 1 to register. That's 876-301-0346 or 579-7097. Women, make your appointment at the Jamaica Cancer Society any weekday or visit your doctor. Get those mammograms or pap smears done. And men, your annual prostate check. It is that important. Listen for the highlights and information givings this Friday, February 2 at 8:30 a.m. right here on Love 101, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Let's join Kareem for a look at how our friends in the social media land space, Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, answer today's question. What would you do if you witnessed a coworker or client having a breakdown at your workplace? Any comments so far, Kareem?
Okay, so Cherry from Spanish Town says, first thing, try not to panic and get the person in a safe space. Try not to cause any damage and call the authorities. That's Cherry from Spanish Town. I have a next person here. I'm not seeing a name. And they said it depends on the level of breakdown they're having. If I can assess the situation and see that talking to them can calm them down, I will. But if they are erratic and cannot be calmed, I would get help and try to restrain them and then call for assistance. But the country needs to be more aware and more trained, and more trained professionals need to be available to to workplaces. Okay, this is Sister Ennis, who is a trained medical professional. All right. I'm looking on or not seeing any comments on Facebook just yet or YouTube just yet. But those are the comments thus far. I have a few voice notes here. I'll take a listen and then I guess we can jump back in.
Thank you very much, Kareem. Very interesting. So I think at this time we may just move right into the second watch. A recent Jamaica Observer article stated that polygraph tests, and I quote rather, polygraph tests catch job applicants involved in cybercrimes and lottery scamming, unquote. It piqued our interest here at the Morning Watch, first to find out about polygraph tests in general. For instance, how can you catch a cyber criminal with a polygraph test? That's the question. Well, let's see how much we can find out this morning. Our guest to help us examine this is polygraph examiner Basil Bury. Mr. Basil Bury, good morning. Are you with us?
Morning, sir. Morning, Mr. Marshall.
Good having you on, Basil Bury. Now, how did you, first of all, get involved in these types of tests? And could you just, for the benefit of the listeners, enlighten us? Assume nothing. What is a polygraph test?
Oh, well, a polygraph is a lie detecting machine, which actually could be described as a stress detector, because what the polygraph actually does, it records your blood pressure, your heartbeat, your respiration, and perspiration. And the assumption is that when we lie, our bodies react largely because we are fearful that the lie that we have told will be
detected,
yes, and the punishment that will flow from it. So it's the stress associated with the act of lying that the instrument actually records. As to how I got involved, I was the victim of a multi-million-dollar fraud.
Really?
Yes, in the 90s, I employed a manager who came highly recommended from one of those executive personnel placement companies.
Yes.
And long and short of it, within 6 months, he had carried down the company millions of dollars, virtually put the company back on its feet. And as a consequence, I decided that I needed to.
Or you mean it pulled the rug from under the feet of the company?
Exactly. So that's how I ended up enrolling at a polygraph school in San Diego, California in 1999.
Okay.
And what started out, you could say, as a sideline, basically administering the odd polygraph test to my employees. At the time, I was running a security company. I realized that this instrument did better than advertised, and many of my clients decided to engage my services. And at one stage, I was actually earning more money from doing a polygraph test than from my primary source of income.
Provision of security services.
Which was providing security services, yes.
Understood. Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of what the test measures.
Yes.
Because the test is not, from what you have described, is not getting into the person's mind to find out if they are lying. What it is doing is measuring certain metrics, for example, the heart rate, etc. So, to get into a little bit of the Bible, this is the morning watch, so we're allowed to do that. Some sinners have a seared conscience. They just don't care. They might be heartless. I don't know. So such a person might, not saying will, but might be a good liar. So they will just lie, and they have no increase in heart rate, no increase in blood pressure. None of those physical things happen because they're just flat out lying. They don't care. It doesn't matter to them. They're not worried about consequences. Can such a person pass a lie detector test or a polygraph test with, can I say, flying colors?
No, trust me, if that was the case, Stokeley, I'd have been out of a job long ago.
Okay. So
I mean, I've done about 10,000 tests, and I'm glad you quoted scripture, because
yes,
I mean, it's Proverbs 28 verse 1 says, "The wicked flee, even when no one pursueth. The righteous is as bold as a lion." And that is an apt description of a polygraph test, because those who do well are the ones who have nothing to fear, who are willing to speak the truth. And those who tend to fail are those whose body reacts as if they're running away. Increased blood pressure, increased heartbeat, increased perspiration, difficulty breathing, even though at the time of the test they're actually seated.
So you are saying that there's no way to pass a lie detector test even if you're actually lying? That's what you're saying?
No, I'm not going to say it's infallible. What I will say is that the instrument is built for purpose, is fit for purpose.
Hold that thought one second.
Where the element...
Hold that thought, Mr. Bury, only because we are upon a break, as I'm noting here. Hold that thought, sir. Do not lose that train of thought. Listeners, please stay with us. Very important topic, polygraph tests. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
In life, the more you have to lose.
The more you love, the more you worry. The more you own, the less you sleep.
The more people rely on you, the more you have on your mind.
I have peace of mind,
knowing that whatever I own
and whoever I care about are covered by the very best.
With Sagicor Life and Advantage General, get life, health, and general insurance to help you protect what matters most.
Love 101 invites you to listen to Leading the Way with Dr. Michael Youssef.
God's blessing of salvation is not only to forgive you all of your sins here and now, but to keep you safe for all of eternity.
Dr. Michael Youssef.
God's blessings for your salvation will keep you protected, and it's going to keep you protected even from your own foolish decisions. He will keep you protected even if you are prone to wander away from Him. Will keep you protected from your ingratitude to His grace and blessing. He will keep you protected from being preoccupied with His blessings and ignoring Him. Even when you're focusing on the wrong things, His security for you is indisputable.
Want to learn more about this subject? Listen to Leading the Way with Dr. Michael Youssef on this station.
That's Leading the Way with Dr. Michael Youssef, Sunday to Thursday at 7:30 to 8 p.m. on the family station, Love 101.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the second watch, having a very interesting discussion on getting to the truth. That's the topic, getting to the truth. We're speaking to polygraph examiner, Mr. Basil Bury, and of course, polygraph examiners administer lie detector tests or polygraph tests. Am I correct, Mr. Basil Bury? Mr. Basil?
Yeah, I probably should correct you. Most people know me by my military rank. Served in the army for a few years, if you don't mind. Left as a captain. All right. So
Captain Bury.
Yes, I believe there may be some other Mr. Burys out there. We wouldn't want them to.
And we don't want any lies here. We want to make sure that no one lies and pretends to be you.
All right. Yes,
Thank
as
you,
I was
Captain
explaining
Bury.
earlier, Stokeley, it's not infallible. All right. In fact, the description you gave earlier are actually persons that I run into regularly, and they are actually the easier subjects to test, because the technique is as much psychological as it is physiological. And
expand on that, please.
All right, I tell people that the polygraph test rises and falls based on the quality of the interview. What's referred to as a pre-test interview. An actual polygraph test takes 4 to 5 minutes to administer, and invariably you run at least 3 or 4 tests before you offer an opinion. But prior to that, you prepare the person for the test. Now, that will require you to interview the individual for at least 45 to 60 minutes. During that time, you're obviously going to acquire as much information on the person. I use that time to observe the person's body language. And based on the type of questions that I'm asking through the prelim, I have a fairly good idea as to who I'm dealing with. It also allows me the opportunity to formulate the questions that I'll be asking on a polygraph test. Now, I should point out, you don't ask more than 10 questions. And of those 10 questions, you'll have 1 or 2, which are known as neutral questions. Those are questions which you already know the answer to. Like, you might ask the person their name, their age. So that will establish the benchmark, because you want to know how their body normally responds when they're speaking the truth, even though they're nervous. And I mentioned nervousness because of the 10,000 persons that I have tested, every one of them was nervous. So nervousness alone will not cause you to fail a polygraph test. Then you're going to be asking questions about the matter at hand. If it's a case of theft, if it's cyber crime, if it's a sexually related offense. So those you'll normally ask 2 or 3 questions. And then you have other questions on the test known as comparison questions. And you'll also have a question which is called a symptomatic question, which is probably, I wouldn't want to bore you with those details, but it's how your body reacts to those questions. Those set of questions is the means by which the polygrapher determines whether or not you're deceptive or non-deceptive to the relevant questions. All right.
Okay. Because they could be quite truthful with certain questions, but there are other questions that they're hiding.
Exactly. And sometimes if the information that you're given is inaccurate, then you're likely to get what's referred to as inconclusive results. I cite, for example, I remember some time ago I was asked to investigate the theft of an expensive piece of jewelry at an inbound shop, and the owner was of the opinion that the item in question was stolen from the showcase. So the questions I asked were, did you take the Rolex watch from the showcase? Do you know for certain? Did you benefit from that particular theft? And I was getting somewhat was inconclusive responses. I subsequently discovered that the Rolex watch was actually stolen from the safe. So here we had somebody who was able to answer the question truthfully, even though they actually stole the item because of the flaw in the question. Okay.
I see. Very interesting. Now, detecting cyber crimes, persons involved in scamming and that sort of a thing, that's a big concern and issue now.
Yes.
How can a polygraph test assist there? I guess it would be just like any other situation.
Exactly.
Can you?
Exactly. You just ask the person. I mean, I do quite a bit of work for BPOs and any company that handles confidential information. And I'll probably ask a question. One of the relevant questions would be, well, have you ever disclosed information of a confidential nature to any unauthorized person? All right. So that would capture any act which would be considered to be in support of a cyber-related act. All right. Or I may ask, were you the person who hacked into the company's platform? All right. So that's not difficult. In fact, I tell people that the most challenging tests are actually the domestic cases that I do from time to time.
Explain.
Infidelity, spouses wanting to know whether or not their partner has cheated on them. I didn't used to do much of that until COVID. And that was,
Really?
yes, because what you found
Explain,
happening.
sir. Explain.
I think the fact that persons were spending more time together.
Yes.
And
at home.
Yes. And they got to know each other a little better. And maybe there are things about their partner that they didn't like and they wanted to delve more deeply into. I used to get those calls. And those are the tests where the females, interestingly, tend to do worse than the men. The failure rate among the females subjects happen to be higher than those of the male species. It's probably the only time I found that to be the case.
More unknown on that, Captain.
Yes.
More unknown.
Your listeners might want to know why that's the case.
Please explain, if you will. I thought you were going to leave it there for the time.
No. I wouldn't want to leave them.
Don't leave a cliffhanger. Go ahead.
It's quite simple, I find that the men, when they find themselves in that situation, they tend not to show up for the test.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
That is the explanation. They just don't turn up.
They don't show up. The women will, the ladies will tend to come and attempt to beat the test. But the men, I think, out of respect for the process, opt not to do the test. They find some other way of resolving their issues.
I see. Very interesting. Very interesting.
It's not a case that men are better liars. No.
Or that men are more truthful.
No, take away ourselves. Take away ourselves. I want to, if you would allow me, I want to cite a particular case I did some time ago, because there's a view out there that the polygraph is anti-worker. All right.
I wanted to go there with you, but since you have already started, go right ahead, sir.
All right. I remember some time ago, I was asked to investigate a case, right, where this hotel employee services were terminated. All right. He apparently an investigation had been initiated, and his PIN was identified as having used in a fraudulent act at a restaurant. He was subsequently seen on a disciplinary hearing, found guilty, dismissed. And during his exit interview, he told the general manager, "You have a thief at the restaurant. The problem is I am not the person." And the manager asked him if he'd be willing to do a polygraph test. And that's how I got to meet him. And interestingly, he passed the polygraph test. And he was able to provide information that allowed me to test two other staff members, one of whom failed and subsequently confessed. And I'm happy to report that the gentleman who had prior been dismissed from the job was reinstated. All right.
Interesting.
Yes. and it's not, and even though a polygraph test in Jamaica is not admissible in our courts, the confessions and self-incriminating testimony that is often obtained is I am reliably advised admissible.
You know, there's a question here on YouTube which I will read to you, Captain Bury. It seems to be reading along the lines: can a person who is fearful of the polygraph environment and or is feeling intimidated during a polygraph test fail, not because of lying but because of nervousness or anxiety? I think you indicated earlier on that being nervous alone will not make you fail, but can you address the concern? The question is from Israel of God. That's
Yeah.
the name I'm seeing the person use.
Yes,
Israel of God.
that's a question I'm often asked, and that's the reason why the pre-test interview is invaluable, because it's important for the polygrapher to establish good rapport with the subject before you actually test them. And there are times when it may not be appropriate for you to test somebody. For example, if the person, let's say, was subject to some form of interrogation by a police officer, and then at that point in time the polygraph is requested, that is not advisable, because the person would not be in what we consider to be psychologically conditioned for the test. So, and I tell my clients also that how you market or how you sell the polygraph is important. Don't accuse a person of stealing and then expect them to do the polygraph test. All right. You know, I try. Well, I make it a point of duty to be on my best of behavior when I'm polygraphing somebody. I will give them the benefit of the doubt, as we ought, and because I know that the persons whom I am most concerned in protecting is the innocent. Those who, as you said, happen to be very nervous, intimidated. All right. Because I'm doing everything in my powers to ensure that they give a favorable reading. I can't help the person who committed the act, because there's nothing I could possibly say to them that's going to absolve them of that fear associated with that act. By the very asking of the question, I'm also almost assured of getting a response. So the emphasis is really to, like I said, calm the person's nerves.
Yes.
Explain the process
Captain
in
Bury,
great
I think we
detail.
are completely out of time. This
Oh.
topic is so interesting. We could continue for another one half of an hour, but I think we're completely out of time. There's so much more I wanted to ask you, but alas, no more time for that, sir. But Captain Bury, it was great having you on.
The pleasure was mine.
And we maybe we should have you back again, but because there's so much more to unpack. But alas, at least for the time being, we have to wrap it here. Thank you, Captain Beer, for spending some time with us on the Morning Watch this morning. Thank you for your time and for your thoughts, sir.
Okay.
And thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again next week for the discussion of other topical and controversial issues. Of course, visit the Love 101 FM YouTube channel and Facebook page for this and all of the Love 101 FM programs, and stay connected to us, the family station Love 101 FM, by downloading our Love 101 app, and listen to the number one gospel station of Jamaica, in Jamaica, Love 101 FM. This has been the Morning Watch. Thanks to our producer, Kathy Gale, and to our guest. Join Reverend Dr. Dylan Toussaint next week as he looks at other topical and controversial issues of the day. I am Stokeley Marshall, handing back to Love in the Morning, this morning with Kareem.
Thank you very much, Sir Stokeley. You are now invited to listen to the program Forward in Faith, brought to you by